It was 2 years ago when Isabel first brought Damien Cross home. I remember the evening vividly. The city lights of San Francisco flickered outside my window as if the grid itself couldn't decide whether to trust him. I had made my mother's old recipe, paella, the dish Isabel always begged for on her birthdays. Damien walked in wearing a tailored obsidian suit, carrying not just roses, but a bottle of century-old wine I knew cost more than my monthly pension. His smile was warm, rehearsed, like an actor stepping into a role he'd played too many times. "Mrs. Raise," he said, kissing my hand like some knight from a forgotten age. "I've heard so much about you. Isabel talks about you constantly." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to see the sparkle in my daughter's eyes and tell myself she'd found someone who deserved her. But there was something in the way his gaze drifted, not at Isabel, not at me, but at the framed map on my wall. An old surveyor's chart of Lake Tahoe marked with my family's plot, the cabin. Over dinner, he asked polite questions about my career in engineering, about Isabel's childhood. But every answer I gave, he steered back to the same subject. "That cabin sounds extraordinary. Original woodwork, untouched land rights. Must be worth a fortune now that Tahoe is a restricted zone." I smiled thinly, pushing another spoonful of rice onto his plate. Most young men in love ask about baby photos, embarrassing childhood stories. Damien Cross asked about property deeds. At the end of the evening, he stood, bowed slightly, and said, "Your mother raised a remarkable woman. You must be so proud, Mrs. Raise." I nodded, but in my chest, a weight pressed down, because I had seen that expression before, the same polished charm my ex-husband wore before he abandoned us, the same glint in his eyes when he spoke about stock options, not people. That night, after Isabel had gone home with Damien, I walked past the Tahoe map. And I swear, under the lamplight, the inked shorelines looked darker, sharper, as if the land itself was warning me. Something was off about Damien Cross. I just didn't know yet how deep his hunger went. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Isabel still called me every Sunday morning, her voice bright, telling me about cases at the law firm, new restaurants in the city, even the silly shows she was binge-watching. But slowly, I noticed the pattern shift. Her calls became shorter, then fewer, then almost none. One evening, when I finally asked, Isabel sighed as if I were a burden. "Mom, Damien says I need to prioritize us. He thinks I've leaned on you too much. If I want our relationship to thrive, I can't keep running to you for everything." Her words sliced deeper than she knew. For years, it had been just the two of us, holidays in Tahoe, birthdays in that tiny kitchen with candles stuck in pies instead of cakes. I was her anchor, and now I was being recast as an obstacle. At dinner one night, Damien put his arm around her chair and looked at me with that polite, chilling smile. "Mrs. Raise, you've done so much for Isabel, but don't you think it's time she learns to build her own traditions without depending on the past?" The past, that was his word for me. After that, I stopped seeing invitations. I wasn't included when they toured wedding venues. I wasn't consulted about guest lists, colors, or flowers, but his family, oh, his family was everywhere. Photos of Isabel laughing with Damien's mother at dress fittings, posts of brunches at his father's wine estate, all the milestones captured in pictures without me. I told myself it was just excitement, that new love often pulls people inward, but deep down I recognized the strategy: isolation, substitution, control. The final blow came on a chilly December evening. Isabel called, her tone casual, like she was discussing the weather. "Mom, this Christmas, Damien thinks it's better we spend the holidays with his family, just to break old patterns." Old patterns, like opening gifts in our pajamas, cocoa mugs steaming on the Tahoe porch while the lake froze silver before our eyes. Like her falling asleep on my shoulder, whispering, "Don't ever let go, Mom." I hung up that night, staring at the silent cabin keys on my desk. And for the first time, I understood. Damien Cross wasn't just taking my daughter's time. He was taking her away from me. The night Isabel told me I wasn't part of her Christmas anymore, I sat awake until dawn, not crying, not pacing, just planning. I've rebuilt skyscrapers from rubble. I've mapped fault lines across collapsing cities. And if there's one thing an engineer knows, it's that cracks always start small. So I began searching for Damien's. At first, I found nothing but polished headlines. Young tech visionary launches AI startup. Bay Area innovator partners with global investors. His online profile was immaculate, almost too immaculate. Every article, every photo carefully staged. But then I stumbled on something buried in an old archive from a collapsed data server. A lawsuit, dismissed quietly, involving a woman named Elena Vargas. She'd accused Damien of fraud during an investment partnership. The details were sealed, but her father's company went bankrupt the same year. That was my first crack. I called an old colleague of mine, Marcus, who now worked in digital forensics. Run his name, I asked. Everywhere, old ledgers, crypto wallets, court filings. 3 days later, Marcus called back, his voice tight. Elena, you need to be careful. This guy's history isn't just shady, it's engineered. He erases his footprints, but not perfectly. What did you find? I whispered. Before Isabel, there were 2 others, both professional women with assets, both cut off from their families after meeting Damien. One broke off the engagement when her brothers discovered unusual withdrawals from her accounts. The other, well, she disappeared from public view entirely, moved overseas after a legal battle. My blood chilled. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. And then came the detail that froze me to my chair. Elena, Damien's grandfather's name, appears in a property dispute. 1874, Lake Tahoe, same coordinates as your family cabin. There's mention of hidden assets, gold. I stared at the faded Tahoe map on my wall, the inked shoreline Damien had studied so intently that first night. Now I understood. He hadn't married my daughter for love. He'd married her for land, inheritance, and a secret fortune buried beneath our name. When Isabel called to announce she was already married, asking for the cabin keys as if I were a concierge, I smiled into the phone. Of course, sweetheart. I'll send them right away. But instead of wrapping keys, I began wrapping truth. First, I revisited the lawsuit records Marcus had dug up. I requested certified copies, stamped in red ink. Then I pulled the old surveyor documents from my father's safe, papers yellowed with age that proved the Ray's family cabin stood on land once contested by Damien's grandfather. Buried in those files was a letter, handwritten in 1874, by a Washoe tribal elder, swearing that gold had been stolen from their land by Damien's ancestor. The handwriting shook, but the seal was undeniable. Next, I had Marcus trace Damien's crypto wallets. He compiled a sleek portfolio of transfers, offshore exchanges, and burner accounts, all leading back to funds marked with the same ancestral name. Finally, I added a personal touch, 2 photos. One of Isabel, age 7, barefoot at the Tahoe cabin, her hair tangled with pine needles, laughing at the water's edge. And one of Damien from an old arrest record, younger, meaner, eyes wild. I arranged everything inside a black leather portfolio. On top, I placed a single silver key, the key to the cabin he wanted so badly. Then I wrapped it in satin, tied it with a white bow, and slid in a handwritten card. Congratulations on your union. Every husband should know the truth about his wife's family history and his own. With love, Elena. On Friday morning, while the city was still waking, I drove to their new penthouse at the floating hotel docks. The streets shimmered with rain. I left the package neatly at their door, pressed the bell once, and walked away without looking back. I didn't need to see Damien's face when he opened it. I could already imagine it. the perfect smile cracking, the mask slipping. The predator realizing the prey had teeth, because this wasn't revenge. This was the gift of truth, and truth, once unwrapped, can never be returned. It didn't take long. At 2:14 p.m. that same day, my phone buzzed. Isabel's number lit the screen. But when I answered, it wasn't my daughter's voice. It was Damien, and he was screaming. "What the hell is this, you witch? You think you can sabotage us with your lies?" I set my teacup down carefully. "Hello, Damien, I take it you opened your wedding gift. These documents are trash, fabricated. Do you know what kind of harassment lawsuit I can file against you?" I smiled into the quiet of my kitchen. Public records can be so inconvenient, can't they? Especially when they connect stolen land, stolen money, and your family name. In the background, I heard Isabel's voice, trembling. "Damien, calm down, let me talk to her." "No," he snapped. "She's trying to destroy us, don't you see? She's jealous, bitter, alone." I cut in softly, my voice sharp enough to slice the room in half. "Isabel, sweetheart, read the portfolio yourself. Look at the bank records, the lawsuit dismissals, the maps, the names. Then ask your husband why he's so terrified of you seeing them." For a moment, silence, only Isabel's uneven breathing. Then Damien again, his tone desperate now, not furious. "Don't listen to her. She's manipulating you just like she always has. If you love me, you'll hang up this phone right now." And that was the moment, the shift, because I knew my daughter's voice when doubt seeped in. "Damien, why are you so afraid? If it's all lies, why not prove it?" He cursed, something heavy slammed in the background, glass shattering. "Because," I said calmly, "the truth always sounds like an attack when you've built your life on lies." I didn't wait for his reply. I hung up, letting the silence swallow him whole. That evening, long after the sun bled into the bay, my phone rang again. This time, Isabel's voice was hoarse, raw from tears. "Mom, I need you to explain everything." And just like that, the cracks in Damien's perfect empire had begun to widen. Isabel showed up at my door just before dawn. Her hair was tangled, her makeup smudged from tears. She looked younger, smaller, like the girl who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. Only this time, the monster wasn't in her closet. He was in her marriage. She sat at the same kitchen table where she'd done her homework as a child, spreading Damien's portfolio across the wood. Her hands trembled as she traced the faded map, the court records, the crypto transfers Marcus had uncovered. "He told me you were lying," she whispered, "that you hated him because he was taking me away, but then I found these." She slid a stack of papers toward me. Emails, financial transfers, correspondence with an alias Cross Air 89. Every line was proof. Damien had been siphoning money for years, plotting, grooming, erasing. "Mom," Isabel said, her voice flat now, emptied of tears, "he targeted me. He studied me. Even our accidental meeting at that conference, he planned it. He knew about the cabin, about Dad, about everything." I reached across the table, taking her hand. "Sweetheart, predators like Damien don't pick weak women. They pick strong ones, women with something worth stealing. You were never the problem, he was." For a long time, she stared at her hands. Then, slowly, she lifted her head. And for the first time in months, I saw it. The fire in her eyes, the same fire that once made her stand up to bullies twice her size. "Then we don't run, we don't hide, we end this, cold and clean." I blinked. "End this," she nodded. "I spoke to your friend Marcus. He put me in touch with a federal investigator, Agent Lou. They've been tracking Damien for years but never had enough to move, until now." Her voice hardened, every word like ice cutting through fog. "When Damien comes crawling back, and he will, I'll let him believe I forgive him. I'll let him confess with his own mouth. And when he does, they'll be listening." The plan was simple, brutal, elegant. We wouldn't scream, we wouldn't beg. We would let Damien bury himself with his own lies. That morning, as Isabel left for the first real sleep she'd had in weeks, I stood at the porch watching the pale light crawl across the bay. For 2 years, Damien Cross had stripped me from my daughter's life. Now, together, we were about to strip away his future. The cold decision had been made, and justice was no longer a dream. It was an operation. Friday night. The city shimmered in neon, rain sliding down glass like tears. Inside Isabel's penthouse, the stage was set. The FBI had wired her apartment. Microphones hidden in flower vases. Agents stationed in the hallway. Isabel wore a pendant inside, a mic so small even Damien's paranoid eyes wouldn't notice. At 8:37 p.m., the door clicked. Damien walked in carrying roses, wearing that smile polished to perfection. "I've missed you, Issa. We can start fresh, just us. No more interference from your mother." Isabel's voice was soft, trembling, but this time, the tremor was controlled. "I believe you, Damien. I shouldn't have doubted you. Let's plan our future together." And then he talked. He boasted about the Tahoe land, about how marrying Isabel meant the gold. Our gold, Issa, hidden for generations, would finally be legitimate. He laughed about the other women, practice runs as he called them. He admitted to funneling money through offshore accounts. Every word captured. At 9:12 p.m., the FBI stormed in. Shouts, guns drawn. Damien's mask shattered at last, replaced by the face of a cornered animal. Isabel sat frozen on the couch, clutching the pendant at her chest. When it was over, when Damien was dragged away in cuffs, she turned to me. For a moment, I thought she might collapse, but instead, she whispered, "He always said you were holding me back, but the truth is you saved me." I pulled her into my arms, my daughter trembling like the little girl who once begged me never to let go. And this time, I whispered back, "I won't, not ever again." The trial came 6 weeks later. Damien Cross, the great visionary, was reduced to a criminal in chains. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, inheritance manipulation. 12 years in federal prison, assets seized. Isabel testified with steel in her voice. Not a victim, but a survivor. And when the verdict rang through the courtroom, she didn't cry. She smiled, cold, certain. Weeks later, as spring sunlight spilled over the Lake Tahoe cabin, Isabel stood barefoot on the porch, the pine trees whispering in the wind. "Mom," she said quietly, "when I marry again someday to someone who deserves me, it'll be here. Not for the land, not for the gold, but for us." I felt my throat tighten. For once, there were no documents, no plans, no battles to fight, just a daughter finding her way back home. And that was the twist Damien never understood. He thought the cabin was treasure, but the real inheritance was the bond he could never break.